trickling in. I know there was a little bit of a behind schedule. Is it afternoon? Yes, it's not morning anymore. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this important conversation on preparing our students for the future. My name is Alicia Cardenas. I am a counselor at West Valley College in Saratoga, California. And I'm also working with the State Chancellor's Office as an AI Fellow with Student Support Services. I'm excited to welcome our panelists, Tara from our media, Christian from AI Education Project, and Summer from Skillfully, who bring valuable perspectives from education industry and workforce development. I've recently connected with all three to learn more about their innovative approaches and helping prepare students for an AI-driven world. Some of the framework for today is this panel will explore how community colleges can bring classroom learning to work with workforce demands in an era transformed by AI. Skills landscape and employer demands are changing rapidly in the advent of AI, requiring a lot of new tools and foundational AI fluency and literacy, and also preparing new opportunities for AI tools to upskill our community college students in the workforce and in industry demand skills. Featuring, again, our leaders from our media, AI Education Project, Skillfully, the conversation will highlight how AI is reshaping student experiences and surfacing and differentiated skills and exposing workforce gaps. Throughout the spotlight presentations and dynamic discussion, panelists will examine how educators, employers, and policymakers can align around AI skill building, scale system solutions, and ensure equitable opportunities for economic advancement and growth. Let's begin this important conversation about empowering our students with AI skills that they need for this economic advancement. So here goes the first question for everyone. Each of you, for your organizations partnering with California community colleges to embed AI within our ecosystem, could you share more about your organization and how you've currently been working to up-level AI exposure with our system?
Yeah, I have a brief presentation, so I'm going to jump right over here. All right, everyone can hear me all right? Awesome. Hi guys, my name is Tara. It's nice to meet you all. I'm the Associate Director of Our Media. And it works, cool. I had not tried the button yet. And I'm excited to spend a couple minutes sharing a little bit about the way that we're working with California's community colleges to lead the way when it comes to student-centered AI engagement. So first, I just wanted to start by digging a little bit into the problem that we're looking at right now. At Our Media, we really see three kind of core intersecting issues that we're responding to. The first one is that AI will have really significant but uncertain impacts on young people's transition from learning into career. The second piece is that we currently don't really have a mechanism in the traditional educational model to, in real time, dig deep with the students and ask them, what do you need when it comes to the way that this technology is changing what it looks like for you to learn and enter career? The last piece is the one that I find most concerning, which is that right now when we look at AI integration, AI adoption, and just conversations around AI, in really well-resourced kind of elite university spaces, students are getting really hands-on experiences working with AI. They're getting introductions to AI ethics and things like that, and we just don't necessarily yet have a comprehensive and kind of consistent approach at the community college level. And so Our Media's whole mission is to empower young people to thrive in an AI-driven future of work. And what our approach looks like in that is co-designing participatory research with Gen Z. So we're turning student insights into institutional recommendations. I thought that was a fun little, I'm glad you guys liked it as well. It brought me so much excitement and hope this morning to hear Dr. Christian talk so much about that kind of student-centered strategy. So yeah, I just want to dig in a little more and share what that has looked like for us. So what we're currently trying to build and eventually scale is a way to host workshops with students that basically give them specific scenarios about the way that they might interact with AI in the classroom, but then in the job search, and then all the way into their first job. So we're saying things like, for example, if you know AI might show up at some part of the interview process, do you feel prepared to navigate that situation? What are you excited about or curious about? And on the flip side, are you afraid of anything or anxious about that situation? And the whole kind of focus with these workshops is, one, to give students that first look into, oh, wow, AI is going to impact not just my learning, but that entire transition I'm going to make into the workforce. And then two, we're trying to surface all of those really, really rich data insights from the students that give us cues as to, okay, here are their core gaps in understanding. Here are the skills and experiences that are going to make them successful in this AI-driven future of work. That first piece, student-centered listening, is at the heart of everything that we do. That second piece, we listen to the students, surface those insights, and then we bring them right into conversation with faculty. So an example of what this has looked like, and I'll share a QR code to check out a report we put out recently, but this past spring we worked with some of the community colleges down in Orange County. And we hosted that listening workshop I had mentioned with students, and then in the afternoon we hosted a session with faculty, and we said, okay, if these are what the students are saying they need, these are the consistent questions they're asking, how might that influence or kind of change your thinking in the classroom? That third piece is that we're trying to develop a model that is scalable so that eventually, right now it looks like us coming onto a campus hosting this workshop. Eventually we want to put together a toolkit so that the 116 campuses across the system are going to be empowered to be able to do this kind of listening with their students on their own and then act on it. That's that QR code that I had mentioned right there. So like I had said, we did some work down in Orange County this past spring. It was a really, really wonderful group of students and faculty and leaders that we worked with. And I want to share, one of the core perspectives that really stood out to me was AI should support, not replace our learning. We want help, not shortcuts. So that's something that was excited to hear. And I would really encourage you all to check out that report. And then looking ahead, as I had mentioned, we're in that phase of refining the workshop, and we eventually want to scale it and offer a toolkit. The California community colleges, it's a massive system, and all of the different regions have different needs. So this is the time where I'd really invite you all to reach out to me and be part of this co-creation process. We want to make sure that the workshop model we're developing matters just as much to rural colleges in NorCal as they do to the ones in LA County, and that means that we need everyone's voice at this stage. So if you're interested in seeing this kind of work being offered to your students or having a voice in this, I would really encourage you guys reach out and email me. It's right up there, or come find me at the end of the session. So thank you all.
Next, we'll hear from Christian at RA. Let me see.
Amazing.
Sure.
So I will spend a little bit of time to introduce myself as well. First of all, I recognize it's cold. Thank you all for being here. I am cold as well. Okay, so as mentioned, my name is Christian. Hi, everybody. I work with the AI Education Project, or AIEDU for short. We are a nonprofit organization that works nationally, primarily with K-12 school districts, to pursue work in light of AI readiness. Essentially, we partner with school districts, in some cases county offices of education, in some cases state departments of education, in some cases higher education organizations. Our goal is really to equip teachers, K-12 systems, and students ultimately for the skills, capacities, mindsets that they need to thrive in the world where AI is quite ubiquitous. And I know it's like probably a point that you've all heard several times this in the past day. But the work that we do is really to go hand in hand with school systems. I try and talk about our work in like three primary pillars of work. The first is defining like what the heck does AI readiness even mean. I know there's a ton of conversations around what skills and capacities students need in order to thrive in this AI world. We do, yes, define those skills and capacities, but we try and actually tease that a little bit more. We deliver a lot of this transformative work, so that can range from content development, that ranges from policy development, teacher training, guidance, research reports. We do a lot of that work itself. And then we also try and catalyze this movement. We issue grants out to other nonprofit organizations. We partner with other national movements. We work with state agencies and governmental bodies in order to make sure the work is scaled and equitable. Generally, we try and work deeply within a few states. We know that as one small national nonprofit organization, we're about 20 people right now. We can't work everywhere in as deep as we'd want to, so we'd rather scale depth rather than scale breadth. And so we've chosen a few specific states to do some work in, California being one of them. I'm based in California. I was a California teacher. I love the state so much. And so like doing a lot of work here is something that we're really, really dedicated to. So as we define what AI readiness means, this is what I'm the core of what we think of AI readiness is and how it's differentiated from AI literacy is we think of AI literacy as like understanding the basics of how AI works, using AI tools, yada, yada. But we do think that it needs to be paired with other basic things that aren't usually defined under AI literacy, like being a critical thinker, being self-motivated, being creative, being collaborative. Those aren't necessary AI literacy skills, but we do think those are necessary skills in order for students to be able to thrive in a world where AI is quite ubiquitous. And so we also want to pair that with something that we refer to as a human advantage, and students understanding and implicitly knowing how to leverage their human advantage skills in this economy that's going to be very disrupted by technology in the next couple of years and has already been seen that disruption happening. And we lay out this framework not just for students, but we also do all of this depth of work for educators. What do educators and what skills do educators need to be equipped with? And then what do systems, like what are the systemic mechanisms to make this available to all teachers and all educators and students within that system? And so we try and lay out this framework from a individual perspective scaled up to what the system needs to do in order to support that individual. And like I said, we develop a lot of classroom curricula. We do a lot of teacher professional development. I know this is probably the biggest change mechanism that's very difficult to scale within school systems, is how do I upskill my current educators? How do I make sure that the people working within my system are able to actually work with this disruption and are not getting overwhelmed by it? Investing in the human capital that you have in your system is probably the first step that you need to make before you start investing in the tech capacities within your systems. If you do one without the other, then it's just not going to work. Making sure that both are paired with an actual like order of operations that makes sense and it includes teacher buy-in is so critical. And like I said, we do a lot of work directly with school systems, and it ranges from small K-12 school districts to entire state departments of education. Understanding how this works from a big school system like New York City Public Schools down to a small rural district in Northern California, like understanding what change management looks like in these different systems is really important to us to understand that like there is no one-size-fits-all model for AI readiness in all these systems. And then, like I said, we try and catalyze our work, meaning we develop partnerships, we do research, we issue a lot of grants. I think so far we've issued about $2.5 million in grants to small, specifically rural and indigenous nonprofits across the country to do this work themselves within their own communities to make sure that this is something that is built out of communities and not put into communities. And a lot of the work that we're doing with the California Community College system is in service of this mission. We want to make sure that we are good partners in this space, that we are not trying to own the work. Everything that we develop, everything that we put out is licensed through Creative Commons. Everything is open source. We really want to be a good partner and a catalyst for this change and human-centered change in for that matter. And so we establish these partnerships in order to make sure that students are on a path to AI readiness. And that necessitates systemic readiness, that necessitates educator readiness itself. It cannot just be something that's a tool or a technology tool that you implement right away and you say, check, the AI box is checked off. We want to make sure that we're actually addressing systemic change that needs to be addressed. So thank you, and we'll get into discussion a little bit later.
Next is Summer from Skillfully.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. As Alicia mentioned, my name is Summer, and I'm the head of partnerships at Skillfully. And I'm really excited to share some of the exciting work that we're doing with a number of colleges within the California Community College ecosystem. Really, the North Star of Skillfully is to enhance students' career opportunities through experiential learning and work integrated learning. And I'll tell you a little bit about how we do this, and I'll try to keep this concise. So we're an AI platform that is basically enabling a digital twin of the skills that you see reflected in the ever-evolving skills landscape within the industry today. What we're able to do and offer students is the ability to use our AI tooling to build out simulations that are a direct representation of a particular job or a particular suite of industry skills, basically allowing that experiential learning for those particular skills to enable career readiness for students. Students are, through our platform, able to not just showcase their skills through a resume, but also often, or more often so, through the actual skills demonstrations through our simulations, which are scored and provided, they're provided feedback and evaluation on. Our simulations also enable deeper career exploration. So when a student is deciding, hey, am I interested in a career in sales or healthcare? It's hard to be able to know whether that's true unless they've actually had their hand in trying it. So what our simulations enable is a lever by which students can get exposure to these skills throughout their educational journey to see if a particular career trajectory is of actual interest to them. Our platform also delivers broader overarching career readiness support in the form of wraparound interviewing, mentorship, and networking support as well. And as I mentioned, all of these simulations are scored, and we're giving narrative feedback to students so they can actually up-level their skill proficiencies within both of these industry-specific skills domains, in addition to the broader career skills that they'll need to succeed. I want to talk a little bit about an interesting pilot that we're doing with the Bay Area Community College Consortium. We're really excited about this work and are excited to expand this work in the coming semesters. Currently, we are working with some local big tech players, namely companies like Salesforce, to be able to take their job descriptions for their entry-level roles. We're doing a specific emphasis on tech sales roles right now. And we are building out digital twins of those job descriptions to put those in front of students for two purposes. One, skill development and skill exposure. And also for us to be able to validate and evaluate those students for opportunities for actual apprenticeship or full-time opportunities that those employers might have. As I mentioned, we want to make sure that we're democratizing access to not just the students who might be applying within that particular program or within that particular hiring cycle. So we make these available to a number of the different colleges across the BACCC ecosystem so that students can practice these skill simulations and get that feedback that they need to be able to further develop these skills for future career opportunities. Some future directions that we're exploring for this work, we'd like to expand outside of just this tech sales hub to other industries like healthcare, also looking at computer science careers as well, and also, as my friends on stage today, looking at enabling AI literacy and fluency for students across the California college ecosystem. I think my 5 minutes is up. Thank you for your patience there. And if you're interested in working with us, I put my email address up on the screen here. Also, feel free to, I'll be hanging out a little bit after this presentation, so feel free to come and talk to me. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and ask the panelists questions, starting off with Tara from our media. So your work at our media centers on partnering with Gen Z to identify AI literacy and career readiness needs and use cases in order to inform faculty and administrative responses to AI's impact on learning and career environment. How should students' attitudes inform the development of responses to AI in the learning and career?
Thank you. Well, I mean, I'll start by sharing my opinion that student voices should be involved at every level of learning design. But oh, thank you. I'm like, we can clap for that. But but I think that AI specifically introduces really chaos. Honestly, introduces chaos to the traditional learning model in ways that really kind of increase the need to right now be drilling in with digging in with the students directly. One statistic I saw recently that just kind of blew me away, I think it was from, I want to say the World Economic Forum, was that 49% of Gen Zers who had been surveyed, who'd recently attained a degree, reported feeling that what they were seeing around them with AI meant that their degree had less value. So I think one really fundamental question that's being asked right now in just across a lot of higher ed spaces is, what are the skills that young people need to be equipped with to succeed in this AI-driven future of work? And then how are we as institutions equipping them with those skills? I think that starting with student attitudes to then find practical solutions that can support them is the way to go, because when students are expressing fear or anxiety, or on the flip side, curiosity or excitement, those are really important cues that tell us, okay, here are potentially really important needs that they have, or here are areas that they just don't have any comfort or familiarity in, so maybe this is where we need to beef up the support that we're giving. So yeah, all of that to say, I think it's always important to look at student attitudes to get cues when we're dealing with something that's as transformative as AI, but especially right now as we're seeing that like the career ladder is going to be chopped off at the bottom. Entry-level roles are going to be potentially going away in a lot of spaces, and so we need to sit down and all of these questions that we're on this side of education asking, the students are asking them too, and I think starting that dialogue is the best way to move forward.
Christian, your work at the AI Education Project centers on providing educators with the tools they need to help students thrive in a world where AI is everywhere. What are the biggest challenges that educators are facing in ensuring their students are AI proficient?
I mean, as I mentioned, the majority of my work is with K-12 systems, and I can tell you right off the bat that K-12 systems, teachers in K-12 systems don't see a lot of support coming from the system itself or them. And AI looks very different depending on the students that they're serving, meaning what a third grade teacher is experiencing is going to be extremely different from what a 10th grade teacher is going to be experiencing, and there is no solution that will work for both of those teachers. And school systems are right now are having a hard time understanding what those support systems need to look like, what teachers actually are needing. Concurrently, and this is something I'm sure all of you can agree with, is we see a lot of a push from ed tech. I am making assumptions here, but I'm assuming the marketing budgets for a lot of ed tech companies has gone up substantially, because at the same time we see teachers being marketed to by a lot of ed tech tools, platforms, websites that are AI powered, and there's a lot of noise out there in terms of what a solution can look like or what a solution should be. And so with all of that noise and with all of the disruption that's happening both to students and teachers in their personal lives and in their professional lives, I think teachers are kind of like either putting their head in the sand because navigating this world is a little bit too much and they're already a little bit overworked, and or they're looking for the one thing that will save them time, or the one thing that they think is going to be the silver bullet. And that's where a lot of these marketing campaigns are working, and that's why you see adoption for AI tools so broad, is because there are real needs out there that teachers are experiencing, and a lot of times AI tools can promise solutions to those needs. I think this idea of offloading the solutions to those needs from the system to individual tools is something I don't want to see. Something I would love to see more of is like, how can systems support teachers a little bit more directly? How can systems offer those resources, those I guess like guidance to help cut through noise? I don't need another 50-page report. I need like a 2-page, like really quick thing about what I need to do right now in the next semester of my work in order to actually address student readiness. And the next semester, what are the next few things that our system is working on that I need to implement now? I think making it bite-sized, making it immediately actionable, and making support actually responsive to teacher needs is something that's really, really necessary right now.
Question is for Summer. Let's see. I'm sorry. Let me get. While our media and the AI education project are providing tools for AI literacy to students, skillfully provides AI-driven technology to ensure that students and job seekers are ready for the workforce. At a time when the skills and the skills employers demand are changing rapidly, how can we make sure higher ed is staying in step with changing industry skills? What are employees looking for as skills change?
Thank you for that question, Alicia. And I'll tackle the first portion of that question just around the rapidly changing skills landscape that's happening out in the job market today. My colleagues have talked a lot about how AI is disrupting the skills landscape and how things are rapidly changing, wiping out entry-level roles. And in addition, we also have employers who are turning to more skills-based hiring approaches where they're really trying to make sure there's a precise match between a student or a job seeker's skills and what they're hiring for. So the question of how do we make sure that higher ed is able to stay in parallel or in step with those employer demands, which ultimately, whether we like it or not, those are the arbiters of who ultimately does enter the workforce. We just need to have more collaboration between employers and higher ed. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir, so I know that this is not like a profound statement. I can share a little bit about some of the work that we're doing with other partners, where we're bringing employers to the table to be active participants in helping to relay and translate how skills are changing in the workforce so that we can then translate that in the form of our technology to the students, job seekers, and learners that we're working with in our partnerships with workforce development organizations, higher ed, and in some cases, K through 12 CTE programming. I wish I had like a silver bullet to say it's like easy, but a lot of this is like starting from the ground up, reimagining what's possible, having multiple conversations with employer and industry partners to help translate that skills data, and then making sure as ed tech providers, we're actually being responsive to that. Not just like putting something shiny and flashy out there for the sake of marketing, but like we're solving a real problem and helping us to bridge this skills gap and this chasm that's widening and even more rapidly than it was, say, 5 years ago. And sorry, I think there was one more piece of that question around what skills are employers looking for.
Yes.
While we have done a lot of work on making sure that we are bridging those skills for the industry relevant or role specific skills that employers are looking for, a huge thing that we hear from both our career service partners and from the employers that we work with is we can't leave the durable skills behind, right? So we have to make sure that when students are showing up for interviews, they're able to hold eye contact, they're able to articulate their transferable skills that they've gathered throughout their career or through their past lived experiences. And so I just want to make sure that we're not just focusing on, okay, these industry skills are changing, or this is what you now need to be successful in this particular role in this sector, but also just making sure we're really helping to up-level and maintain those critical durable skills as well for students and job seekers.
Thank you. Back to Tara from Our Media. What insights have you gathered from students regarding Our Media's recent report, piloting student-centered AI engagement across California community colleges?
Yeah, so I think I'll offer a statement and offer a few themes. The statement would be that there is no one consistent student perspective or relationship with AI. I've interacted over the past couple of years with students who say, I will never ever touch AI no matter how you offer it to me. And I've talked to other students who are saying, I don't know how I would have learned without AI. So, and there's a wide spectrum in between those. So that's kind of the overall thing. But then within that, there are some themes that I've definitely been noticing recently. And a lot of them are reflected in so to drill in a little more into what the spring effort looked like, we hosted that workshop with students. We also hosted a panel of student leaders, as well as doing some student interviews. So we got a really kind of holistic view of the student perspective. One really big theme that stood out to me is that a lot of students were saying, I'm really concerned about AI's impacts on my critical thinking skills. I'm really concerned that I'm going to develop a dependency on AI that makes it hard for me to be creative or efficient or collaborative on my own. Some students were saying, I see this with my own self. One quote that came to me from a student, actually not in the spring, but even before that, was, when I use AI, sometimes it feels like I'm turning my brain off. That was definitely concerning. Some of them are saying, when I look around at my peers, I'm worried that they're relying on tools that I'm not relying on, and they're not going to be able to keep up with me when it really comes down to actually doing the work. So that's the first thing, is really, really concerned about where is the boundary for how much and to what extent I should be engaging with AI. The second theme that stood out to me was, how is AI going to change what it looks like for me to get a job? I think that's the biggest fear that students have, because they're seeing the headlines. There are massive layoffs in the tech industry, but elsewhere. I think I saw something that said that 2/3 of hiring managers say that they wouldn't consider hiring someone who's not AI literate. So the students are hearing these headlines and the signals, and they're concerned. They're like, I know this will impact my ability to get a job. The third piece after those first two is that students don't seem to have a consistent narrative coming to them from their educators about how to deal with those first two pieces. So when it comes to making sure that they're not developing over reliance on AI, or on the flip side, if they're trying to prepare to succeed in a future of work, a really, really common concern that I heard was, some of my professors are saying to use it, some of them aren't, and I don't know how to make sense of all of this. So I think that's at the heart of what we're trying to do with our approach of bringing the student voices into dialogue with faculty and administrators, is to make sure that from the educator perspective, we're well equipped with, hear how my students are engaging with AI, hear what their needs are, hear what their fears are, and here's how I deliver a consistent message that helps them deal with that. So, yeah, I feel like I talked for a little while.
Thank you. Next question here for Christian from the AI Education Project. Where are you seeing the most success in working with educators to embed AI literacy into their curriculum?
This one working? Yes. Cool. This mic is really cute, so I'll use this one. So the thing about AI literacy work is that you don't want it to feel like an extra thing that educators have to do. Because I think educators' workloads and the objectives that they have in their courses and their curricula is already quite overloaded. And so the most success that you have in helping educators actually build student AI literacy is in the opportunities that you have to embed those learning objectives in already existing learning objectives. And I like to reference this a lot with quite akin to the internet, where the internet is something that's quite ubiquitous. It's changed work. It's really disrupted a lot of industries. In your courses, in your classes, we don't have internet learning objectives that are siloed into like an internet category. Similarly, I don't think we need AI learning objectives that are siloed into an AI category. We embed internet literacy work naturally because it's a part of the way that we work. It's a part of the way that we share information. It's a part of the way that we even learn today in the real world. I think the same thing is going to happen with AI. We need to embed AI literacy into the existing work streams that are happening. If in classes teachers are pursuing project-based learning opportunities, how can you embed the use of AI tools in those project-based learning opportunities to embed AI literacy as part of one of those learning objectives? Even though it might be a project on world languages, you could still think about how students can use or think about AI as it pertains to that project itself. And so I would say the most success is when teachers don't feel like AI is something that's like put onto them as an additional layer that's on a stack of objectives that they already have to teach against. But when it's a part or embedded within already existing learning objectives, it is not going to take extra time out of their classroom or out of their syllabus. It's not going to take extra units of lesson planning and delivery. I think that's where you can do it. And to be honest, it's a lot easier than it might feel. AI as a technology is novel, it's new, but it's still very embedded in everyday things that we do day to day. Not every example of AI is a large language model chatbot interface. There's plenty of examples of AI being embedded in maybe more background things that you're engaging with every day. So as you're teaching from subjects like history, art, ELA, math, whatever it could be, I think teaching about data sets, teaching about technology platforms, teaching about how AI is influencing the real world is something that is a lot easier to embed than you might think. Just takes, I think, a lens of thinking about that embedding work for us to make it happen. I want to make sure that the message coming from a system to an educator is not that AI is another siloed subject that you need to be teaching in your coursework, but rather it's something that should be embedded. And let's help these educators embed this into their existing coursework. And I think that's where you're going to find the most success into making sure that your students are prepared in this next semester or two, not in 3 semesters after we've redesigned entire courses.
Thank you. Next question here for Summer from Skillfully. How can AI be used to ensure that students are work ready and be placed into high potential careers after leaving the system?
Thank you for that question. We've talked a lot about AI's disruption and the uncertainty that creates for higher ed. Simultaneously, there is a huge opportunity for AI to act as a lever to democratize access to all students for both career skill building and career exposure. I guess I'll go back to just my big plug for just trying to, as much as we possibly can, embed experiential learning and work integrated learning into not only the classroom, but also at the career services level. We think that the intersection of that philosophy and that approach with AI creates a huge opportunity for students to get both role-specific upskilling that's going to be required for them to be successful in today's job market. AI also allows us to more flexibly and scalably prop up those kind of micro internship or virtual internship opportunities to keep pace with the evolving nature of the skills landscape. And it also just offers an opportunity for us to be able to offer broader career skill building and development to students, whether that's getting prepared for an interview, whether that's practicing a mentorship or a networking chat to do an informational interview with a mentor or someone whose career you might be interested in learning more about. That's where we feel like there is a really big and powerful opportunity for AI to be a really powerful tool in helping students to become more workplace ready. So not to say that there are not challenges with that. I think this disruption and the pace at which it's happened has, I imagine, has created large-scale challenges for you all as educators. But on the flip side of that, I think there also is a huge opportunity to help support your students as well.
I'm gonna jump in a little bit actually on I love so Skillfully, the way that you talk about this is, I think, very akin to the real world jobs market. I think something that education and the jobs market oftentimes misconstrue is you're actually doing a lot of the same things, but you're just speaking two very different languages. If you look at economists' report and research that comes out of economists and output that comes out of education research, a lot of times they're the same things. I think you talk about skills-based workforce. In education, we just call those learning objectives, and they do map to skills, but we don't do that mapping in the same way the workforce does. And so as much as you can, think about how learning objectives that you have for students might map to skills, and taking that skills landscape and mapping it to what skills you think are going to be most effective in the workforce. That is a gap that I think exists between education and economy that hasn't quite been closed, or is like I said, it's speaking two different languages. But as much as we can kind of map the learning objectives to actual workplace skills, like what you're talking about, I think our mechanisms for updating education to be more effective for the real world are going to be much more clear than you think they are.
Thank you. So as we wrap up this session, want to just bring a few points for each of our presenters. Our media talked about empowering young people, using a hands-on approach, preparing for AI through workshops, using the trainer model to educate, and they host workshops at campuses. The AI Education Project talked about content policy development, working closely with K through 12, framework for students and educators, classroom curriculum, webinars, they offer that as well. Skillfully talked about experiential learning, offers AI platform that allows students to use simulated opportunities for career readiness. Students are provided feedback from these AI simulated platforms so they can improve their skills. Here's some questions that I just want to leave for thinking. How are institutions equipping our students? How can we get our students, with solving problems, having them, be creative with innovative skills? How can the opportunity of experiential learning opportunities be offered? And how can we embed, as Christian said, how can we embed AI literacy into student learning outcomes? So now what we'll do is we'll open the floor for questions for any of our presenters, or each of our presenters can maybe answer the question. Yes.
My question is, when we're working to support students in connecting with understanding what employers in our local area are looking for, and we're creating these events where that allows that interface, not only in a panel discussion, but in a networking environment, what is the best way to convey to students what an amazing opportunity that is, in a way that they'll get, oh, I've got to be there, right? Do you have any suggestions for that?
I mean, I think students, you'll know more about this from you're working with listening to student voice, but I do think students feel inherently this anxiety about the shifting jobs landscape. I do think that there is a lot of uncertainty, even if you ask these companies how they're shifting hiring practices or how they're shifting skills assessments. Even these companies are still in the middle of figuring that out themselves. Large corporations are still doing that, let alone smaller local businesses as well. And so having direct connection or a direct line to these local businesses is probably the best way that you can hear about what's happening in real time. I think there's probably a little bit of comfort that might come from that connection point between student and local business to understand that shifting landscape, because what students are probably going to hear is that local businesses are also wanting to figure it out. Local businesses are actually probably going to want to know the student perspective as well. As a worker or as someone who's coming into the workforce, what are things that you think are going to change? What are skills that you bring to the table that maybe some of my older employees don't bring to the table? I think having that discussion or starting that is going to quell anxieties from both the employer and the employees. And I think emphasizing that point is going to be really helpful.
I'm going to steal your mic. I think mine wasn't quite working. I think that's a really great question just around the student engagement piece. So candidly, we've set up programs in the past for learners where, it's a self-opt-in type of thing, and we see super low engagement because I think the reality and the nature of students' lives is that some of them may have families, they're very busy, they're competing priorities, they might have multiple jobs. I think one of the ways that we have been trying to solve for this is as skillfully is collecting kind of the industry requirements or asks for these skills of hey, it would be really great if, aside from the technical skills that we can teach people on the job, if they could just show up with proactivity, problem solving, we're able to then bake that into special programs that we can deliver to students through our platform that are, we hope, in best case scenario, anchored to some type of specific program within the college, some type of special initiative. And that's where we've really started to see we pique students' interest, and it really helps to guide that engagement despite the multiple competing priorities that they might have going on in their lives. And so I think we, as ed tech platforms, as educators, we have a responsibility to just make sure that we're putting that information in front of students in a way that's going to align with the structures of their lives and the reality of their lived experience. And I do think that AI and technology is a lever in helping us to do that a little bit more efficiently.
Yeah. First, kudos to you, because that sounds like a really, really wonderful opportunity for the students. Networking, I think, is one of the core skills right now that young people need to be developing. Networking, connecting to mentors, and then those kind of hands-on job experiences. My recommendation might be to try and find some success stories and put that in front of the students. My experience has been that you can tell a student 7 million times that this will help them. It's way more impactful for another student to come in and say, I was skeptical too, I took the time to participate, and here are the opportunities that came out of it. That's really the kind of thing that'll make them wake up to it. And if there's no students who could speak to that, even just someone on your team who could say, I get it, you're overwhelmed and you're busy, but here's what it looked like for me to put myself out like that, and here's what came of it.
So, the information age created this whole population of disenfranchised workers. And many of us are concerned about AI creating another population of disenfranchised workers. Each of you, particularly Tara and Christian, are focused on a traditional age student by virtue of the audience. In the case of Christian, Tara, you've chosen to focus on Gen Z. What about the non-traditional students? Because a lot of us see those non-trad students in community colleges, but we're also worried about the ones that we're not seeing yet, who may be in danger of losing their job, or who may be pushed out a little early because they need AI upskilling. And I'm wondering if any of you are thinking about that or working with that in the spaces you currently occupy.
I know I've centered most of my comments today on the work that we're doing with higher ed and career, or higher ed systems and K through 12 systems, but we have, a whole arm of our organization that does just that. So we work with workforce development organizations, workforce boards, to make sure that folks either who are later in life learners or thinking about, okay, how do my skills stay evergreen as, I feel like the ground is shifting underneath me. How can I make sure that I'm staying, that I'll have a job in 5 years, like candidly. So we work a lot with workforce development partners, also continuous learning partners within the education systems, and also directly within employers and enterprises to make sure that their employees are upskilling continuously to continue to meet their business objectives. So I talked a little bit less about that, but I'm happy to, if you have questions after.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be directly honest. Our work is not really. We haven't done much work with unconventional learners. In this in this vein, very differentiated, but also something that I think is also consider a group that's considered unconventional learners are the parents of students as well. This is a big anxiety that we hear from adults who have younger kids in the education system about. I don't know what advice to even give my kid nowadays. They're wondering about what careers they're exploring. I don't know what to tell them. Parents themselves are feeling insecure about their own ability to be a mentor to their own kids. And in work through K-12 systems and in partnering with other organizations like museums, local libraries, and organizations like after-school programs, these are organizations that are very, very, very plugged into local communities and probably know the needs of local communities more than I, as a national nonprofit, might know. And so partnering with these local community organizations in order to help them embed programs for themselves, for parents, for non-traditional learners, for students that are going in through after-school programming or daycare, making sure that those programs are alive and well is really important as well. The work that I'm doing is making sure that funding for that programming, for those kinds of programming, doesn't stop, because a lot of what you're talking about needs to be extremely community-led. A lot of learning spaces in communities are dying, and the resources going to libraries and museums and after-school programs are not as strong as they were 10 years ago. And so making sure that we're actually not only giving funding but giving expertise and giving resources to these kinds of communities are things that I'm trying to do more of.
Yeah, I think it's really important to bring non-traditional students into focus when we're having this conversation, because it's easy to get caught up in just the next generation of learners. But yeah, I appreciate that point. While our work focuses on serving Gen Z, specifically what we've done over the past year with the community colleges has touched some of the adult learners who are in that system and some of the other non-traditional students. So all of that to say, our work is meant to be applicable to them as well. It's really thinking about just folks broadly who are transitioning from learning into employment. But I think that there needs to be more work done on the specific challenges that non-traditional students might be facing. I don't think we're necessarily right now the best folks to do that, but I think one of the big things I'm seeing is that, you know, like the half-life of skills is just decreasing because whatever like technical, for example, skills you develop right now, they're just not necessarily going to be as relevant or applicable in 6 months as they used to be. And so thinking about what does it look like to foster lifelong learning and adaptability as core skills, that's going to be really important. So yeah, to sum that up, our work does touch those groups, but I really, really do think more in-depth work needs to be done there.
Any other questions? Yes.
This one may be for you, Christian. You mentioned embedding AI literacy in curriculum is obviously a lot better than kind of bolting it on and giving students or instructors something else to do. Do you have any examples of where you've seen that work really well that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, there's like maybe three different layers to this that I talk about. First is maybe the legislative layer about in California we have both CTE coursework that is funded through the states and HQIM, which are like the high quality instructional materials that are recommended by the state to education systems. So like, what do those recommendation structures look like, and how can they be updated? That's a legislative trigger that needs to happen. In practice, I think there's maybe one example is more relevant to K-12 and one example is more relevant to community colleges. So I'm going to lean towards the community college example. CTE coursework is actually a really interesting system in California. It's a pretty good example of a program that is a direct collaboration between K-12 systems, county offices, ROPs, and community colleges. And a lot of times community colleges are the anchor point for a lot of CTE programming work that happens in different communities. These CTE programs are oftentimes very, very slow to update, especially if these are designed to be career and technical education programs. Careers are shifting so quickly, and CTE program delivery models are not shifting as quickly to meet that need. A really good example I'll highlight out of the CTE programming work is the cybersecurity like CTE pathway that California has in place. That program was developed back in 2012. Technically, that curriculum has not been updated since 2012. And so if you are in any way maybe have an inclination that 2012 cybersecurity curriculum is relevant to today's workforce, there's probably a lot of problems that exist there. But there have been a lot of individual ROPs or community colleges in which the actual the faculty staff have taken upon themselves to update that coursework on their own. And AI has been a very big disruptor, especially in the cybersecurity space. I would highlight the work that's happening out of the South Orange County ROP in collaboration with Fullerton College and Cypress College, I believe. They updated their cybersecurity pathway program fully independently, separate from what the curriculum that the state has given them. And I think it's a very, very good update, and it's a really good example of how to embed AI literacy work in a career pathway program that is not necessarily has to do with AI, but AI affects greatly. And I think cybersecurity is an example of that. I would also look towards the arts. There have been a lot of arts content that have been updated in the past several years, because arts is another space in which AI has been a huge disruptor, especially graphic and digital arts. I'd look at the way that the arts courses are updating their work for AI literacy work, because it does combine a combination of what is AI, how does big data contribute to bias and hallucination from AI, down to individual tech-focused skills of using AI tools in that work field. I think those are two examples that come to mind immediately for me.
We've come to the end of our presentation. I want to do a quick thank you for the attendees, and thank you to Tara, Christian, and Summer for their time and energy.